smart metering and technology. We're just developing that area. And of course, all of these also had some chain reaction. You know, it actually enlarged the tariff shortfall and market shortfall that we've had, and also affected the remittance that the DisCos were actually making to other market participants. But despite all of these challenges, we've also had very great development. We've had great initiatives from the government to help ease this burden, you know, from introduction of the service reflective tariff to, you know, the different interventions we've had in different sectors, I mean, different areas of the sector. They recently introduced National Mass Metering Program is one of them. And there was also the initiation, the commencement of the PPI, and, you know, we've also had commissioning of quite a number of, you know, mini grids just to help with, you know, increasing accessibility. So basically, it's just been a whole lot happening in 2020. So much has happened, and I think this is just like the best topic we can actually have to close the power dialogue. What happened in 2020, what the expectations should be for 2021, what are the projections. We all are praying that 2021 will be better for us all, and hopefully we have something to look forward to get the sector, you know, rolling. And to talk about this, we have very, very capable hands. And we have Commissioner Daffy Akpeneye. He's the Commissioner Legal Licensing and Compliance of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. You're welcome, Commissioner Daffy. It's really nice to have you here, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. We also have Ms. Joy Ogaji. Ms. Joy Ogaji is the Executive Secretary, Association of Power Generation Companies. You're welcome, Ms. Ogaji. And we also have Mr. Adakole Elijah. He's the Head Corporate Communications for Jos Electricity Distribution PLC. You're welcome, Mr. Adakole. Oh, Dr. Adakole, pardon me. Yeah. Okay, so I think we should just move straight to it because of time. Commissioner Daffy, it's been a wonderful year. I mean, we should refer to it as that. And we would like to hear how it has really been for the NEC. I mean, being the regulator, and it would have been a roller coaster. It would have been. We would just like to hear the experience. How has it been for NEC, sir?
I think NERC isn't in a different situation. We're not isolated from the overall happenings in the economy. Like you said in your opening, it's been a very fortunate year for Nigeria. If you look at, there was so much optimism, as you said in your opening, and we looked forward to the start of 2020, but a lot happened this year. And if you had gone by the predictions of the public health experts, it was meant to be dire for the third world and Africa in particular. And there were predictions that we would have picking up bodies on the road. And I don't know, as in, I think God has been very fortunate to us, with us. And to say that we are only at less than 75,000 cases. And in that number, you have, that also includes people who were earlier infected and discharged from hospital and are now healthy. There's a lot to be grateful and hopeful for. We appear to be hitting what looks like a second wave, as cases appear to be increasing. And people appear to be putting their guards down. A friend of mine went to Warri and told me that it was the only person that he saw wearing a mask. You go to certain parts and you don't see anybody wearing a mask. But nonetheless, it's one that we should all be thankful for. It's been a challenging year for everyone, and economically we're in a recession at this point in time. But when you put it in context with what was expected to hit us, we should say we've taken it with our chin up, and we're not where we were predicted to be. For the power sector, it's a lot has happened this year, but what it has demonstrated, it's demonstrated the resilience of everyone as a collective to come together to ensure that there's supply, to ensure that the part we have started upon and the initiatives we've put in place, there was no remarked break, you know. So we started the year with the march towards implementing the cost-reflective, moving towards cost-reflective tariff. And just as we were concluding the consultations that led us to, that gave us the feedback that Nigerians told us, the commission, that yes, indeed, we're ready to pay for power, but we're only going to pay for service. We would no longer work on the basis of premises and promises. So on that basis, we went on board to develop the steps taken towards leading towards the service reflective or service-based tariffs. But even in the height of the lockdown, we were able to put in place, set up a NESI situation room to ensure that the lights stayed on. And it was indeed a bit challenging at the start, but with the collective efforts, you know, everyone working together, GENCOs, DISCOs, TCN, we were able to ensure that the lights stayed on. The lights may flicker in my office. They're doing some work with the lights, so it may go on and off. So we were able to ensure that during the height of the lockdown, end-use customers saw improve. There was service sustained. We had issues here and there, but all hands were on deck towards ensuring that the available generation, the power we have in the pool, got to the customers. And as a lot of commercial and industrial concerns weren't operating, there was an imperative to ensure that a lot of that power got moved to residential customers. So that was the height. We ensured that business continuity arrangements were put in place for players across the sectors, for TCN, for DISCOs, and for GENCOs, ensuring that they had people working in shift and on ground whilst complying with the COVID-19 protocols that were put in place by government. We worked with government to ensure that members of the sector were categorized as essential service workers, and permits were given to ensure that meters could be moved across the country, transformers could be moved, and things that needed to be moved from hindrances. We've come out of lockdown to deal with other issues in the sector, basically majorly being the implementation of the service-based tariffs. After that was released, we had pushback from labor. We had the consultations, and we are back on track and looking towards work for the next reviews, and are very optimistic and hopeful towards as we move towards 2021, bearing in mind that government, there's been predictions from the policy side that handle the economy, that we may be out of recession sooner than expected. On the public health side, vaccines have been discovered for the virus and are being launched and deployed in the West. So things are looking up, and we are very optimistic that 2021 will be better than 2020, but we're still grateful for 2020 that things didn't pan out the way most had expected.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Daffy. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Adakole, thank you for joining us. We would like to hear from you what it's been like for the DISCOs so far in 2020. What has it been like? Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, you're hearing me now. Okay, thank you. Yeah, for us, for those of us who operate within the ambit of DISCOs in this country, the situation has been so troublesome, so pathetic, and so terrible, because at the beginning of the year, everything appears very smooth until at about March, where COVID-19 set in, and that dislocated everything that we're doing as an organization, as a sector within the energy sector. You will agree with me that the advent of COVID-19 triggered a lot of problems. One, there's what we call structural readjustment. Structural readjustment in the sense that we were supposed to look inward. Even though there was a total lockdown in the country within the period under COVID-19, operations or operationalities of DISCOs were never really stopped, because it was expected of us to continue to give energy, to give power to our customers, especially when people were expected to stay indoor. Without energy, the staying at home will certainly become so boring. So DISCOs were up and doing to ensure that, yes, customers were satisfied in terms of energy delivery. But at the same time, money was also not coming in terms of collections from these customers, because some of them were at home, some persons, some workers were laid off, unemployment setting, and so on and so forth. And that affected our collections very hugely. But it does also not insulate us from paying to the market. So it became a very huge challenge within the period. You will agree with me too that most DISCOs, if you look at our mode of payment or our collection throughout the period, you realize that our collections were on a decline, and that affected us negatively. Of course, we also try to keep body and soul together by doing the needful, by ensuring that, yes, we push. But despite the push, it was still very, very difficult. So COVID-19 was actually a problem. And then there are other matters, other auxiliary matters arising that also sprouted or were triggered by the advent of COVID-19. At the end of COVID-19, you realize that unemployment surged. And with unemployment in the country, you will also agree with me that affordability, people having money, having the ability to pay, becomes a problem. The COVID-19 also affected the economy of the country generally. So markets were closed, everything was, so there was no money anywhere. And if there was no money and we continue the business of energy distribution, energy retailing, you will also agree with me that collections will naturally be a problem. So it was really a problem. It affected us very, very negatively. And up to this moment, I can assure you that no DISCO has truly and genuinely recovered from the effect of COVID-19. So generally, the year wasn't a good one for the operators of energy market, especially the retailers, the DISCOs. So it wasn't a good one for us at all.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Adakole. I think Dr. Gaji is on now.
Yes, I'm on the line now.
All right, thank you for joining us. You're welcome. So we are talking about 2020, what it's been like, and we'd like to hear your opening remark regarding how it's been for the generation companies. What's been like as Genco?
Thank you so much for that question. 2020 is not different from any other year for the generation companies. So yes, for the generation companies, by way of opening remark, has not been different from 2013 till date. It's been 7 years of gloomy annual losses for the generation companies. Some of the investors have told me that they regret investing in the power sector, in the Nigerian power sector. It's as if where the power sector is cursed. I am quoting word to word by one of the investors who called me and poured out his heart to me, how painful it is to invest in this sector. So for the generation companies, it is not just 2020 that is gloomy for them. 2013 is gloomy, 14 is gloomier, 15 gloomier, 16, I don't know what superlative to use. 2016 continues, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20, we have COVID to blame. But for the Gencos, 2013 to 2019, what did we blame on? NESI, Nigerian Electricity Supply Industry. What did we blame on? There was no COVID for 6 years. The 7th year, we have COVID to blame. So for the Gencos, yes, this is a 7-year gloomy anniversary for the power generation companies. And they're not even sure that 2021 is going to be a bright year, because there is nothing on ground to show that 2021 is going to be better. That is how bad it is. I don't know if you want me to continue, but that's an opening remark enough for me.
Thank you so much. We understand that we share it with you, but I think Commissioner Duffy wants to say something about that.
I take a very different view from Dr. Ogaji, and I am surprised with her comments. And as people who who work, and I use me as a regulator, in a sector that is, even though tiered, wholly integrated, we should be careful with the messaging we give to the Nigerian public. Let's be mindful, right, that in this same sector that we are saying is gloomy, people who bought into the Transcorp, who invested in the Ughelli plant, just bought after, in the midst of all the constraints and issues we are facing. There are Gencos that are seeking to still come on stream. The QIPP, the Black Rhino QIPP is still trying to come on board. Just the issues we're having is dealing with the PRG and other sovereign documents to guarantee the financing. Nigeria, and anyone can seek to rebut me if I'm wrong. We have the largest power market in Africa. We have the demographics are there, the people are there. 210 million people doing 5,000 megawatts on a daily basis shows you that there's a lot to be done. We've had misalignments, yes, but that doesn't take away the fact that the opportunities are still there, and investors, even in the generation space, Transcorp is still coming to take on another power plant. They just closed that deal a few weeks ago. Please, let's be mindful of the representations we make. Please, we should be very mindful.
With all due respect to the commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Gaji.
Yes, okay. With all due respect to Mr. Commissioner and to the audience listening, I said what I said with all sense of responsibility. And I'm not surprised that Transcorp will be used as an example. The fact that Transcorp acquired AFAM is not a story that the sector is doing very well. And if anybody wants to report this again, should call Mr. Tony Elumelu and ask him why he went into AFAM. Now, another assignment I will also give whoever wants to find out more to have facts before making reference to AFAM and Transcorp is to find out for how long has AFAM been on the sale. AFAM, for the records, has been on this out for sale the same time as the privatization, right from 2010 or 2008. 2008, AFAM, like every other generation company, was put there for sale. But the reserve bidders pulled out. AFAM was now left like a redundant property. And how federal government and the current investors closed that deal is something for people to go and find out. Now, the commissioner also made reference to QIPP and other investors who have not been able to close out. Why couldn't they close out? Just like the 10 solar power plants. Yes, we have the market. There is no argument about that. We have the population. We have the demographics. Yes, there is no argument about that. We are the largest economy. Yes. The power sector, yes, is a very attractive bride for any groom to come and marry. But for how long? For 7 years, you've been showing your beauty, and yet you're not marriageable yet. Is that a union? So what do we need to put in place? It is high time we tell ourselves the truth. 7 years of privatization, and investors are still complaining and still crying. And the 2021, as we speak now, there is no policy directive for 2021. And what are the plans? How do we meet our vision 2030? Where are the plans? Short term, medium term, long term? Who are the monitors? Who are the action party? What are the deliverables? Where are they? See, we can just sit here and be pampering ourselves and say, well done, sir. You have done so well. But see, let us measure ourselves, not within. We should measure ourselves with outside. Measure ourselves with our West African countries. Measure ourselves with our other sub-Saharan African countries. Let's measure ourselves with similar economies like Brazil, similar population size. Let us not measure ourselves based on what we think we're doing. Policy somersaults, misalignments here and there for 7 years. So what is the plan? I'm speaking because me, as a representative of the GENCOs, asking me for 2021, I don't know what the plan is. I have a plan, the GENCOs have a plan, I'm aligning with their plan, but I don't know what is the larger plan of the country. So if I have in any way misrepresented any fact, I repeat that what I said it with all sense of responsibility and factuality too. Thank you.
I think that will actually bring me to the next question is, of course, we all know because of the tariff shortfall and market shortfall, it has really affected the GENCOs. But I recall that sometime last year, I think there was this order given by the NEC talking about how they have actually earmarked some money from what was actually put aside under the PSRP to be able to take care of some, I mean, this tariff shortfall that had been, that have accrued over the years due to the fact that NEC was unable to review, or do I say, review the tariff in accordance with the regulations. So is this plan still in place, and what is the government actually doing towards this? Maybe this would actually ease the burden a bit for the GENCOs. Commissioner Daffy.
There have been quite a few interventions arising from the policy issue. So, like I alluded in the response to Dr. Ogaji's opening remarks, the sector is fully interconnected, even though it's tiered into generation, transmission, and distribution. And it's the funding that you get from the end use customers at distribution level that feeds the entire value chain. If these customers are not paying the appropriate cost of the appropriate tariff, it has a ripple effect. And the ripple effect goes back upstream, meaning that GENCOs are not able to meet up with their gas obligations. They're not able to meet up with their OPEX and CAPEX obligations that they've signed up to. And you have this large hole. So what has happened, because that arose from a policy issue, government has stepped in. We've had various intervention funds to ensure that the GENCOs get paid, and that has been put in place. And there's also been a consistent effort towards ensuring that there's a ramp up of collections in the sector and a sustained move towards cost-reflective tariffs so that the sector can stand on its own, right? And also addressing the various misalignments that, minus the tariff issues, you have issues with us not being able to offtake all the power on the customer end that is generated upstream. So dealing with the alignment issues and which will be classed as a technical issues, and also dealing with the commercial issues to ensure that funds get in. So there's been concerted intervention by government. The CBN has stepped in. There's been approval for the World Bank funding under the PSRP to ensure that these financial obligations can be met.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Dr. Adakole, I apologize for that. How well are the DISCOs actually performing? I know we've actually been talking about the fact that the DISCOs have been constrained due to the, the tariff and all that, and we're just beginning to, get over that stage, maybe hopefully with this new service-based regime, and maybe that would actually help. But I mean, with their performance improvement plan, like what's the performance been like, and what are your expectations?
Well, thank you very much. Well, in terms of a performance improvement plan, if I should take it from January to December this year, you will also agree with me that it was halted. It was also suspended. Suspended in the sense that when you cannot operate very well or operate maximally, and you cannot collect money, then automatically, because the plan itself is tied to your operations. So to some extent, I can say that the performance improvement plans were actually halted because a lot of activities that ought to have been carried out. Couldn't. One, apart from the pandemic that we saw, there was also what we call policy inconsistency in the market, not deliberately orchestrated to frustrate discourse, but occasioned by the situation that we found ourselves. First, you will agree with me that at the end of COVID-19, we had end of SARS crisis, which also affected our operations because it got to a level, especially in so many places, you saw a complete coffee being imposed, door-to-door coffee, no movement being imposed on towns and cities. And if coffee are imposed on towns and coffee, in cities, then it becomes very, very problematic for discos to go out in search of their money, even though we were insulated because we also categorized as staff on essential services. But then when you come to issue of collection, banks were closed. When you go to premises for them to even pay you, how are they going to get the money? So it also affected us because the moment you're unable to collect, the moment you're unable to get money, the moment there were social upheaval, the moment there were problems here and there, then automatically it will affect every other thing. But again, I strongly believe that plans are not designed to be implemented wholesomely one day. So gradually, you will see that discos are also intervening in terms of solidification of their infrastructure in order to deliver energy to their customers. If you go around today, you will agree with me that virtually all the discos in the country are deliberately injecting funds into their infrastructure by upgrading them, deliberate upgradation of their facilities. And if that is done, then automatically the PIP we are talking about will naturally flow and then go away. But it's not something that you can achieve within a period of, let's say, 6 months, 12 months, because some of these equipment, even when you import them, they are not manufactured in this country. And even when you import them, sometimes it takes up to a year for them to arrive. So I think that gradually we'll get there. And I think that discos are also trying their best within the ambit, in the face of the harsh economic realities confronting everybody in this country. I think they are putting on their best and they are trying their best.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. But one more thing, I agree with you. I mean, we really need to applaud the government for some of those interventions to try and see how they could, ease the burden on the sector. But Commissioner Daffy also mentioned the different types of interventions that have been made, from the CBN. There was the Siemens project. Of course, all of these interventions, even the recent national mass metering, all of these interventions are ways to help the disco, right? And in turn, also help the other market participants, particularly the GENCOs. But we see that these interventions are actually in form of debt. Do you want to say anything about that regarding, we've been talking about liquidity so far, and then you are also going to still be carrying on all of this debts on your books.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do you think this is still going to really make you as a bride, let me borrow the words of Dr. Gaji, you as the bride, will it still make you very, very attractive to your suitors, the investors?
Okay, first and foremost, I want to thank you for that question. The problem has to do with our system. The Nigerian privatization of the energy sector was copied hook and sink from Indian model. But even in India, you will agree with me that in 2020, there have been a modification to their privatization act. If you agree with me, therefore it's a lawyer, and I'm sure he's aware of this. But we still remain stagnant where we are. I'm not blaming anybody. It is our system. Energy came to Nigeria in 1896, 15 years after it was established in England. But if you go to England today, you will agree with me that the degree of progress made is so huge. Here we are at this level that we are today, trying to, if at the beginning, before the privatization, if certain, how do I put it? If certain parameters were taken into cognizance, I am sure that we may have been better than where we are today. For instance, before privatization of energy in England, in Britain, in India, in South Africa, even in Asia, where energy is produced in terawatt, there was a deliberate injection of funds by government. The energy sector was heavily solidified. And after the solidification, the government now say, well, for us, because governments are not good business managers. So what we do, let us push it to private sector so that they can help us manage. But here we have a situation where at that time, government ran away or shied away from their responsibility by saying, well, we've not been able to manage it, maybe let the investors come in and then manage it. And that is where we have problems today. Now, these incentives that that government is talking about are actually loans. They're actually loans, meaning that they are now borrowing money to do more, borrowing money to provide meters, borrowing money to ensure that other facilities and installations are solidified or provided. So it's going to be actually a problem, because I am very sure that from the beginning, most shareholders, most business, most investors never envisaged the degree or the magnitude of the problem in the industry before venturing into it. So it's going to be a problem, whether we like it or not. But sincerely speaking, as it is, because what that means is that discos are expected, even by this intervention that we are talking about, you take loan from bank, maybe at a one-digit interest rate, and then you invest into it, and gradually recoup. There's also a problem, because they are now insisting that all the discos should pay market liabilities full. If you don't have money, they provide loan for you to pay. So it's going to be a problem. But I am saying that for us, whether you give in a new tariff, whether you even high tariff to 1 million naira per kilowatt, is not even the issue. I think what we should be doing, which government is also doing rightly, and that we also pointed at, is the issue of metering. Once customers are metered, once the infrastructure are solidified and everything is stabilized and sanitized, I am very sure that gradually we'll be able to also get this money from the market to pay the other people in the chain market of energy distribution. I think that is my opinion.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Adakole. Dr. Ogaji, please, I would like to hear from you. What are your expectations? I know you mentioned the other time that you do not really have like clear framework. I mean, using it loosely. I know you said it the other time, but of course, from the different initiatives that have actually been put in place right now, what are your expectations from there? The fact that, okay, discos are now beginning to charge service-based tariff, and so there's a possibility that there's going to be, some more money. The fact that there's now going to be, intervention relating to, bridging of the metering gap that we have at the moment, which will most likely pull down the commercial losses for the discos. And then, of course, they'll be able to also bill accurately for what the consumers actually consume. So with all of this, what are your expectations as GENCO? I mean, do you strongly believe that this would actually improve the health of the GENCOs?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for the opportunity again to speak. At this juncture, for clarity and for focused discussion, I would like to share a few slides, please.
Can you grant her the permission? Okay,
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Please go up a bit, please. Let me start from the top. Okay. No, just take off the introduction. Introduction doesn't matter because of time. I'll just run through it. I know Just Disco is here, Echo Disco is represented here, though moderating. So there are two discos here. And unlike us, we don't see what you do, but this is our report card for 7 years. So bear with me and quickly look through it. And also see if the Gencos are right to feel frustrated. So this is our 7-year report card, starting from 2013 to November. As at November, you can check the megawatt that is being utilized. See how much I'm generating or I'm making available, and see what is being used in a country that we say 5,000 is too small for us. And I'm beginning to question, do we really have demand in this country? Do we really have people who need power? You will see the third column. It shows what is stranded every year. And my dear, gas is being procured for it on take or pay obligations most times. There are salaries that are being paid because we cannot say that the market is taking only 3,000. So we lay off some staff and keep only staff that can generate 3,000. Because tomorrow you will see that you're taking up to 3,006. Do we bring back some staff and increase it to 3,600? So just bear with me. This is a 7-year report card for the generation company. Do you say the Gencos are in business? The next slide, please. Now, this is the payment report card. This is the payment report card. And you can see for yourself, notwithstanding the minimum remittance order, what I am expecting. I cannot plan. I heard there was a minimum remittance order for 2019. So 2019, I should be expecting 34%. And even the 34%, I couldn't plan with it because 34% was not met. Then it was increased to 36%. Yet it could not be met. Now it's 65%. I don't even know. So can you bear with me why I don't know what 2021 holds for me as a Genco? Next slide. These are a list of our challenges. All these risks are on our books. Liquidity challenge, the acquisition loans, the pressure we get from our creditors calling us. We acquire this asset the same time as the discos at a dollar rate of 157 to $1. You know what the cost is. There is no forex window for the power sector. So all the maintenance is dollarized. All the equipment that keep the machine running are all dollarized, are not made from Nigeria. Notwithstanding the COVID, we had a lot of challenges during the COVID, where even the OEMs could not come in. In addition to difficulty in accessing forex, but we must continue to generate. Next slide, please. I want to just quickly run through. I don't want to belabor the fact, but I want to put on record some facts so that just keep going. Okay, hold on here. Projection for 2021, closing the gap between available generation. This is my projection for 2021. But just like every other year, I've always made these projections and I've never gone halfway. So how am I sure that 2021, I'm going to meet it up? Especially when you see that your PIP, the discourse PIP, does not have a handshake with my own. In 4 years' time, the discourse, in fact, 4 years from today, discourse will not be even close to my available capacity as of today. In a market, in the same market. So, who is my off-taker? Am I generating just to tick a box? Next slide. So these are some of our recommendations. There is need for synergy in all NESI plans. Harmonization is a watchword. You know, I enjoyed the question when you asked my brother from Jos, Dr. Elijah. Sorry, I have to, so that I don't spell, I don't mispronounce your other name. Our native names are very beautiful, and I don't want to mix it up. So my brother, Dr. Elijah, and he was answering the questions on the various policies. It's not as if the GENCOs are not happy with government interventions and policies, but all we are asking is those policies, before they are shunned out, can we have a comprehensive stakeholders meeting, discuss elaborately, back and forth, pros and cons, pieces it, put it together before you implement it? With that, everybody will be on board. You will carry me along. I know why you're bringing in loan for NNMP, and I will support it because I know why we all supported it. Not, I only read it on the pages of newspaper that NNMP has been brought in as a second loan that will be on a second line charge before I am paid. After the NEMS, that is the 213 billion, which is already the first line charge on the waterfall. The NNMP loan now is going to be the second line charge without my consent. And I am an investor in a market. And you think that I should be happy? I should go and do Thanksgiving in the church or in the mosque? Please, policy and regulatory leadership should, as a matter of urgency, develop multi-year models and framework as long-term vision, smart plans that present a comprehensive and sustainable, viable solution. They should pioneer and develop bespoke solutions focused on optimizing the utilization of installed and available capacity. Because we are not having an annual target for ourselves. That is why from 2013 till now, we're still on 3,000, maximum 4,000. There is no projection. There is no handshake between the vesting contract and the PPA. The vesting contract has a percentage, like Abuja, 11.5%. Of what? I keep asking, is it of the installed capacity? Is it of the available capacity? Which one? Is it of my expansion capacity? Which one? I don't know. So I am, without being alarmist and without being a prophetess of doom, this is our reality. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gaji. You've answered this one and many other questions that I want to ask. But before I go to the commissioner to ask if he wants to react to some of your recommendations, I would like Dr. Adakole to actually say something about some of these things. So Dr. Gaji has actually highlighted certain challenges. The reason why the GENCOs are not actually being optimistic or raising their hopes, because they've done this for 7 years and still counting. So one of which is the fact that there's still some stranded, what is being generated is different from what is being transmitted and all of that. All of this actually bogged down to, the infrastructure challenges that we've always talked about. And then also the second, do you think, honestly, that with this Siemens deal, do you think there is hope for that to be addressed? And do you think Dr. Gaji should, raise our hope a little bit when it comes to being able to generate and being able to, for the transmission company to be able to transmit and the discos to actually receive as much as they are supposed to get? That's one. Two, with the collection or the remittance challenge that they have, which is that the discos are not actually remitting so much. With this service reflective tariff regime that we have actually entered as a disco so far, do you think the implementation of this is going to actually resolve that problem? And do you think Dr. Gaji should also raise our hope in this regard? Yes, please, go ahead. Please, briefly, because I want Commissioner Daffy to also say something about those recommendations before we start taking questions, because we're kind of running out of time. Thank you.
Yeah, first, I will briefly comment on stranded energy. First, why is it that sometimes discos find it difficult to take the energy she's talking about? I would have been happier if a TCN is also represented here, because you cannot allocate those blames wholeheartedly on DisCos, because sometimes there are infrastructural failure, system collapse, and so on and so forth. And when there are problems like that, you don't also expect DisCos to take. We only get what they transport to us to distribute or disseminate to our customers. So sometimes it is not the fault of DisCos that energy generated could not completely be evacuated onto us. In most cases, sometimes it's not our fault. Sometimes, yes, it is our fault, because when you also have facilities that you are trying to manage and then upgrade, sometimes you cannot take everything completely. And that is why NEC is also on the neck of DisCos, that they should improve on their facilities. And I think DisCos, like I earlier mentioned, have also deliberately embarked on what I would describe as upgradation of their facilities or infrastructure. Once that is done, the issue she is raising will become a thing of the past. But as we speak, the blame should not be squarely placed on DisCos alone, because there are other variables, there are other factors that could lead to these problems. Now, issue of collections via the instrumentality of tariff that you raised. First, I talk about measurement implements, and that is where government is intervening by the provision of loans via the central bank for DisCos to acquire loans and then ensure that meters are procured. For us in Jos Disco, we just acquired about 8,500 something meters to be installed for our customers in the first phase. And we have the desirability of procuring about 900,000 meters to ensure that all our customers are metered. Once all our customers are metered, issue of collection will become a thing of the past. And once issue of collection becomes a thing of the past, of course, DisCos will naturally pay to the market. And if they pay to the market, of course, Dr. Gadi, as her fears will be eradicated. Because as it is, our biggest problem is even our rural customers. Most of our rural customers, as it is, they're on 33. You understand the point I'm making? And because they're on 33, they are not within the ambit of township. Some of them are farmers. Some of them don't even have what we call affordability. But if you are able to provide meters for them, you know you'll be measuring them well, adequately, and at the end of the day, they can also embark on what we call energy management to pay for what they consumed. Exactly. You get the point I'm making? So once that is done, and we are able to collect this money from customers, of course, why would they be holding their money? They will naturally pay to them. But some of these problems are the problems I earlier enumerated, that if these issues were at the inception or at the commencement of privatization taken care of, we may not be where we are today.
Thank you, Doctor. Commissioner Daffy.
Yes, Mr. Lowen.
Sorry, can we get your reaction to some of these recommendations and suggestions made?
You see, Mr. Lowen, I think you are a lawyer as well, and you are also in this sector. So when someone says that decisions are being taken without consultation, I really don't know how much of a recommendation that is. Where fully under the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, the Commission, in its role responsible for the implementation of law, cannot take a decision without going through a consultation process. And every decision the Commission takes, be it leading to a regulation, be it leading to the minor reviews, there are notices that are published in the papers, there are consultations that are held, leading to whatever decisions before we take a decision as a Commission. Then we need to flip to the policy side. Under the law, the federal government, through the Minister of Power, is responsible for policy and can issue policy directions to the Commission. And the Commission states its reasons for accepting or deny or not accepting the policy direction. And the Act gives us two grounds in which we can reject a policy direction of the Minister of Power. First being the policy direction is inconsistent with the Constitution. Second being the policy direction is inconsistent with the Electric Power Sector Reform Act itself. So when I see a recommendation saying that there's been no consultation, I really don't know how to respond to that, because as a sector, we consult more than any other sector in Nigeria. There's no other sector in Nigeria that before we make any decision, all stakeholders have to be carried along. The issue now is because the money, it's primarily a commercial issue. Because the money isn't enough to go around, you have the push and pull of insecurities. Oh, the discos believe they're not getting enough. TCN believes they are not getting enough. GENCOs believe they're not getting enough. And the gas suppliers believe they're also not getting enough, which is why work is being done to address the issues. The rep of the GENCOs posted the minimum remittance requirements, showing things were in red. It's a bit counterintuitive that considering all that has happened in Nigeria today, where we went through the COVID lockdowns, and we went through NSAS protest that was a formidable national security issue. And we saw warehouses being looted across this country. How do discos get their money? Discos get their money from going to a customer. Either the customer goes to vend, or the disco sends a bill, and the customer goes to a bank to pay that bill. Anyone who's a Nigerian will witness what has happened in the country this year, whereby ATMs were raided, pulled out of banks, bank branches were burnt. It was a challenging time for any business. People, SMEs, I watched on TV where people were crying, basically crying that their businesses had been burnt to the ground. Historical buildings like the Lagos High Court that was built in the 50s, burnt to the ground. The hall, City Hall in Lagos, burnt. So in this same challenging environment, right, whereby the funding comes from a customer, and the customer has a touch point, a payment touch point with the provider, it is unreasonable to expect that you would have the same level of performance, which is why the federal government has intervened with the Central Bank of Nigeria to ensure that bridge financing is put in place to fill the hole, and people can get paid whilst this business is being done. So we need to be mindful that no one is isolated from the issues, and businesses run in the context of a country, and you can only thrive as a business where there is peace and security. Once law and order, there's a break in law and order, it affects businesses' ability to perform, regardless of the business continuity measures you may have in place. Which is why you can see that to ensure that the metering issue is addressed, the federal government, the president himself, has intervened with the National Mass Metering Program, and there's been CBN bridge financing to bridge the gap, whilst we are expecting the funding from the World Bank under the Power Sector Recovery Program. The Siemens program is meant to bring about curing the misalignments that exist between transmission and distribution. And consultations are being held by all parties to ensure that we achieve these goals. So no one stands on his own. Whilst we work towards ensuring that we sort out the issues in the sector.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Daffey. Before we go into projections for 2021, I would like to check the questions and take a few questions from the audience. Okay, some of them are comments. I'll just quickly run through them. There's a comment here. Okay, the lady is being factual. How does Siemens deal play to benefit all stakeholders? I'm actually sure that Commissioner Daffey has actually mentioned that briefly right now, and Dr. Adakole also mentioned something about it, but I don't know, Commissioner Daffey, do you want to say something more? Because I think you've practically addressed that.
So the Siemens deal, a dedicated special purpose vehicle has been set up by the federal government to ensure the implementation of that. So work is on course towards ensuring that it meets its mandate.
Thank you. What are the plans of government and private investors in considering renewable energy as a viable, veritable, and valuable alternative to hydroelectric power?
Is that for me?
Yes, Commissioner, yes.
Okay, so there's been a lot of push around renewables, bringing solar and wind onto the grid. But most people, except you're a sector person, you need to be mindful of your base load requirements before you integrate renewables into it. So countries that you see where they have launched, that you see that they're using, they tell you that they have a lot of renewables. Renewables tend to be very intermittent, and you can go from peaks to lows in a very short period of time. So before you can fully integrate a lot of renewables into your grid, you must ensure that you have your base load commitments fully secure and the provider of ancillary services that can provide black start or assist with frequency modulation are there. In a situation whereby you notice that the on-grid thermal providers, right, are still complaining about us trying to address the misalignment issues in the sector. We need to bring in renewables on a gradual basis and as part of a strategic plan, right? So in ensuring that we have diversification of our energy mix. But before we can start to bring on stream large-scale renewables, we need to sort out the issues with the thermals that can provide certain power. So it's, the person mentioned hydros. It's not really hydros because much of our generation isn't from hydro. Yeah. And truly, our comparative advantage from a generation standpoint sits with gas because we have more gas than any other resources for generation. So as we scale up our generation capacity, we will start to diversify the energy mix by bringing in on-grid renewables. But it has to be done at the right pricing and in a manner that it doesn't affect the grid.
Okay, thank you so much. We're running out of time. I would just say, Dr. Gaji, people are requesting for your slides. Is it okay to send it later to the admin to circulate? I don't know if that's fine.
That is fine. And I corroborate 120% with Commissioner Dafe on his comment on renewable. While it is okay for us to advocate and agitate for renewable and to be like every other country, just like the children of Israel who wanted a king, I want to add my voice to what he has said by saying Nigerians need to run their race. Let us focus on optimization of what is available, full utilization of what is installed and available, and then in a phasing method, plan our generation in the country. We have a vision 2030, out of which 3,000 is it? I think it should be 3,000. It's expected to come from renewable. So how much of the 20,000 megawatt from other conventional sources have we explored? What is our plan? We have less than 10 years to Vision 2030. Otherwise, it is going to end up like our Vision 2020 that has now been renewed by date. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm in Port Harcourt and haven't had power for 3 straight days suddenly. Okay, as a player in the GENCO, I'm frustrated to see gas turbines on standby or minimum frequency speed. What percentage of stranded power is attributed to DISCO and TCN? As DISCO rep, what's the forecast to reduce your share of trapped power? Dr. Adakole, I think this is for you. Briefly, please. Hello, are you on?
Hello. Are you hearing me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now, please. Yes, we can.
Okay, it was a bit noisy here. Can you repeat your question?
Okay, so the question is, what's the forecast to reduce your share of trapped power? You know, the person is talking about the percentage of stranded power attributed to DISCOs and TCN. So, but he's asking, as a DISCO rep, what's the forecast to reduce your share of trapped power? I think basically asking what are the plans, or what are the ways the DISCOs are actually, what are the measures you're putting in place to be able to reduce your own, the portion attributed to the DISCOs for the trapped power?
Well, for now, are you hearing me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
For now, I will not be able to give you the exact forecast because management of various DISCOs are putting up strategies aimed at doing exactly what. If I tell you that this is the plan now, I think it will be too premature. So I wouldn't want to comment on what I will not be able to adequately and comprehensively defend. But I strongly believe that by the first week of first quarter of next year, they should be able to also come out, and the AMED will also inform all the stakeholders in the industry. But for now, I will not be able to tell you that yes, this is what all the DISCOs are planning. It's going to be difficult for me.
Okay, thank you very much. So before we go to closing remarks that would also include the projections for 2021, I have like 4 hands up from the attendees. Admin, can we actually allow the 4 or 2? I mean, briefly, 1 minute. Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible. Just get on that.
Okay,
right
please,
now.
please, can we allow them one after the other? Please, briefly, attendees, you have just few seconds to quickly state your questions.
Good afternoon. Or good evening, panelists and the moderator. My name is Ayo Babalola, and I joined the meeting from Oyo State. And in the course of the discussion, some issues were raised, and the one that I want to actually address is the fact that the power consumption is lower than the power that is being generated. And that brings to mind the question, why is it so? And what would come to mind is the fact that there is a wide flow of alternative power supply that is generating set what's it called now, generating sets in circulation in the country. And I think if you go around the industrial areas, most of those companies are running on alternative power supply. Is there a way to ensure that power being generated is being, I don't know if there's a possibility to mandate some of these establishments to run on power generated from the national grid? I don't know if there's anything that can be done to that effect, because if we must develop the power sector, it means that funds must come in. And then also is the fact that the metering, I think it was Dr. Adakole that mentioned the issue of metering. Now, metering is not properly done in many parts of the country, and most especially in Oyo State where I am. I can tell you for free that power metering is not properly done, and even when it's done, consumers are paying heavily for meters, which I believe should not be so. So these are issues that I think if we can tackle these issues, then we can have a way forward in the power sector. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Babalola. I think that would be for Commissioner Duffy to answer. I think so, but I think we should choose I think we should hear from the next person. Then we will have all the questions answered at the same time. Okay, all right. You have the floor, Mr. Shadrack. Briefly, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Please go ahead. Good evening.
Yeah,
you have a few seconds, please.
Yeah, my name is Shadrack. I'm calling from Ibadan as well.
You're welcome.
Yes, in fact, I really appreciate you for this type of seminar, meeting rather. But there are a lot of things that is wrong as far as the sector is concerned. I run advocacy on electricity, and I'm based in Ibadan. And everything starts from the way it is. Let me start like this. In fact, when we are talking about the power generation and the decline in transmitting it to the transmission, we need to firstly search the line that transmits the energy generated from the generating station to the transmission station, where some may be sagging. But the only one I just want you to know, and I can tell you, is that the one that is transmitting from the transmitting station to the distributor, to the discos, their exact position. Even from the discos to the injection stations, you can see definitely the amount of energy that is being transmitted from one point to the other will be different because of the exact position of it. And nothing has been done to correct this thing for a very long time. Till now, there is no how there will not be energy loss from one point to the other. If we can have anything good to do on that, that one will improve the power supply and the energy generation we are talking about. Now, let us now talk about metering. Like the former speaker has rightly said, it's a major problem as far as the sector is concerned. When we're talking about metering at one point or the other, from the generation to transmission to the disco, and the disco to the consumers. Even the major problem we are having is that I would just put it this way, that the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has just decided to close their eyes on a lot of things that is happening as far as metering is concerning in the disco. They introduced CAPNI, it failed. Other discos introduced their own different type of metering program, all failed. Even the map, the recent map, failed, because I have people that have paid for map meter since June, July, August. They could not be metered till now, and we are even to even worsen the whole situation. A situation where the disco will be telling a customer that paid for a meter that they are going to meter them on
Sorry, Mr. Shadrack. I think there's something wrong with your connection.
Give electricity consumer free. Or refund.
Hello, Mr. Shadrack. Sorry, I think there's something wrong with your connection, but I don't know if we were able to capture the main question. Okay. Okay. Can we allow Mr. Lanre quickly put his question out so that we can just move, we can conclude.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, please, Mr. Lanre. You have very few seconds, please.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question about the eligible customers to take care of our stranded capacity. So, what's the update on the policy on eligible customer? Then my second question is that we have service reflective tariff. Is there any mechanism on the part of NEC to make sure that final consumers are not being cheated on? Because I'm not sure there's any mechanism for NEC to monitor adherence of that number of hours that DISCOs has promised. So I really want an answer as regards that. Then lastly, I know there's a lot of knowledge gap in NEC. In Nigerian power industry, so many people don't understand power system and electricity market. So I wouldn't know maybe there's anything being done about training, because most professionals that claim to know about the power system in Nigeria don't really understand the market very well. And so we have a lot of knowledge gaps. So I don't know what is being addressed as regards that. Thank you so much.
Sorry, knowledge gap addressed, is it within, did you say within NEC, or did you say as a whole in Nigeria?
Well, within the industry, I mean, okay, the NEC, DISCOs, and CCN and market operators.
Okay, thank you. Can we take Brian quickly so we can wrap up questions from the attendees? Thank you. Can we take Mr. Onye Jelly quickly, please? Thank you. Please, you have a few seconds, please.
Yes, sorry. I wanted to find out if Dr. Gaji can send us, just a copy of our slides, our presentation slides.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Commissioner Daffy, I think most of the questions are actually for you. Please, you have the floor.
Okay, I'll start with the first one on the commercial and industrial customers. There's no law in Nigeria that permits you to take power from the grid. The decision on where customers choose to take power from is a commercial decision. And grid power all over the world tends to be the cheapest source of power. But if that power isn't available, isn't reliable, isn't of the quality that a steel manufacturer per se would want, or a manufacturer of beverages, whereby if the line stops, you have to destroy all that stock, they are going to look for a means of alternative power generation. And what the business case for that is that it's more expensive for them, but because it meets the needs of their business and they can pass that cost on to their customers, they will stay away from the grid. In places whereby we've had schemes put in place to ensure that certain grid solutions or dedicated off-grid solutions have come into place, using the eligible customer framework for a place like Surah Market. I think for almost 2 years now, everybody who owns a generator in Surah Market has switched off, hasn't used their generator because they have a dedicated provider. So that's the opportunity that lies for the sector. Once the alignment and the guarantees can be put into place, all the investments that these manufacturers have put in place to have their own captive solutions, they're either going to do one of two things. Those assets become stranded assets while they move to the grid, or they partner with the DISCOs and provide embedded power solutions by selling excess power that they have onto the grid. So it's not something that we can do by compulsion. It's something that is done by performance. The minute the grid starts to perform at a level where manufacturers can say that, okay, I'm sure of the availability and the quality, they will naturally transit to the grid, because the grid always tends to be cheaper than you generating power on your own. Then I think the next question was, someone asked a question on eligible customer. The reason we've only had, we've approved about two or three. The reason for that is most of the applicants have not complied with the specific requirements in the regulation. The essence of the eligible customer regulation was to ensure that the stranded capacity, right, can be taken and moved on to certain dedicated customers who meet a certain requirement. And in doing that, there's developments are being made to improve the bottlenecks that exist in the system. So what we've seen is most of the applications were not with investments being made to improve the bottleneck in the system, but with intention being made to move away from having the DISCO as the provider of the electricity to the customer to a dedicated GENCO. So be that as it may, if all the customers are able, if all the applicants are able to comply with the requirements of the regulation, as a few have done, that transition will be done. But the preference is to see that the bottlenecks that exist are being improved upon. There was also a question about monitoring of SRT. That is work in progress, and data loggers are being placed in feeders to ensure that there's visibility of availability of certain feeders. Expansion is being done to ensure that we're able to meet that. A question was asked on the issue of knowledge gaps. I really can't speak to that as in the sector, on the sector side, because everyone has a job that they're doing, and they're doing that job in line with the governing sector documents, the market rules, the Act, the grid code, the metering code. So the industry framework exists and players exist. But on the customer side, and as a general populace, I think a lot of enlightenment needs to be done, because not too many people are aware of the way the sector works and obligations, general obligations in the sector. Even things, still hearing people say things like NEPA, right, or PHCN, when the sector has been fully privatized and these bodies don't exist anymore, or the obligation, people still are assuming that, oh, government is responsible for providing electricity when the sector has been provided. So that I would concede on that more work needs to be done to enlighten the country, the Nigerians as a whole, on what's the current state of the sector today and how the electrons get to you, and the obligations, your obligations of the customer and your obligations to pay for power. I heard Mr. Akibuduche say that a map had failed. I hold a very different view, because when the map was meant to kick off, we had an issue with the imposition of increase of customs duty on meters, and we had agreed that to protect customers across the country, meters will be sold at a fixed price across the country. So that increase in customs duty caused a serious bottleneck with the initial deployment of meters. But after that issue was addressed, there's been a more rapid rollout. The maps have taken the issues on board, and it has even gone a step further to where we now have MAP Plus, whereby we now have the National Mass Metering Program to address the issue. It's clear that, yes, lack of meters and estimated billing is the #1 customer complaint issue in Nigeria as a whole, and it's being tackled head-on by the various players in government to ensure that it is addressed. I think I've taken the 4 questions that were asked.
Yes, thank you so much, Commissioner. If we can quickly have like a wrap-up, like your closing remark, but in between the closing remark, we would like to hear the projection for 2020. What's the projection for 2020 as it relates to the regulator? What are the plans that you have for the sector? And we would, after Commissioner Dafe, we'll go to Dr. Gaji, and then we'll have Dr. Adakole also give his closing remarks, all talking about the projections also and the expectations. Thank you. Briefly, please.
I think closing remarks, there's much optimism, like I said in the opening remarks, for 2021 as we work towards addressing the issues in the sector. And there's things we may not be where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be. And the Commission is focused on dealing with its strategic plan on the various items, and work has started in earnest, and that is going to continue as we move into 2021.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Dr. Gaji, please.
Thank you very much. I've already given you my 2021 projection. So allow me not to repeat that again. If by way of closing remark, I want to say that the time to act is now. For 7 years, our progress report was 24% power increase. That came to about 734 megawatts extra. So that's the success of the privatization for 7 years. I don't see that as a pass. Our power increased by over 132%, but utilization was just 24%. That to me is not a pass. While it is okay to blame the coronavirus pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic has without a doubt reshuffled global priorities, giving us an unprecedented opportunity to collectively hit the reset button and make changes to build back a better, more resilient energy sector centered on data-centric planning. What cannot be measured cannot be improved. We have less than 10 years to meet the SDG 7, where the world will, if successful, deliver access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. The road trip for Nigeria began 7 years ago. Where are we going? Can we arrive? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gaji. Dr. Adakole, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, for us, a lot is expected of us.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Adakole, you can go on. We can't hear you. Please unmute your mic. Okay.
Okay. Are you hearing me now?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. For discourse in the country, a lot are expected of us, but what I want the regulator to do is to come out with a legal framework that will coerce customers to pay. Finish? That will coerce customers to pay. There's nothing wrong with them coming up with an idea that tribunals should be set up to address issues of energy theft. People who are using our energy without paying, because if they don't pay, we will also not be able to get this money to pay to the market. Therefore, I want to urge Dafe, who is also a lawyer, to come out with a legal framework aimed at curtailing energy theft, aimed at forcing those who are taking our energy and not paying so that they can also pay. Because if they don't pay, then we are in trouble. We are really in soup. So I want to urge him to look into that direction. I am sure that all the issues being complained about by the GENCOs has to do with issue of payment. But if we don't set up mechanism aimed at encouraging or coercing or forcing customers to pay for what they freely use, they should also there will be problems. So I want to urge him, I want to urge NEC to come up with a framework, legal framework, take it to National Assembly, let them also legislate on it, so that at the end of the day, if you take energy and you don't pay, you know that yes, you can be taken to court and be charged to do the necessary things. Once we do that, the problem will be resolved.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adakule. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful session. I want to first of all say thank you to all our panelists, Commissioner Dafe, Dr. Gaji, and Dr. Adakule. I personally enjoyed this session, and that's one of the reasons, many benefits of having sessions like this. It actually allows or gives the opportunity for different participants, whether be the GENCO, the DISCO, and of course the audience and myself, for instance, as customers, to be able to hear their opinion and also to hear the regulators out and hear what they have in store for us. So I've personally enjoyed this, and I want to believe that we've all learned from it. But just to recap, basically, we've heard about how 2020 has actually been, how the pandemic has actually affected the DISCOs. But despite all of this, we've had so many interventions from the government and the regulators, from the implementation of the service respective tariff. And also, we've also had the intervention in relation to, the Siemens deal that is currently still ongoing, and basically to solve the whole issue of the infrastructure problem and deficit that we have within the sector. And then also the interventions from the CBN and regarding the metering and some other interventions we've had. So altogether, we've heard about all of this. And then we also had the regulators say they are very optimistic about 2021. With all of this work in progress, all of these policies, initiatives, the regulator actually expects to see a better 2021, improved power, improved ATC and C losses, and they want to see that the GENCOs, they are hopeful that the GENCOs will also, be smiling, and Dr. Gaji will also be happy about that. We've also heard the GENCO also say that they would like to, see participants actually act, they want to see more synergy within the sector, and they also want to be carried along, plus they want to see proper planning to be able to see all of these policies come to play and yield very good results. And then the DISCO has also mentioned the fact that they would like to see more energy theft. I personally, as a customer, as just an enthusiast in the power sector, I personally think that it's not really about inadequacy of laws, really. We have the laws that we can actually work with when it comes to implementation or enforcement of energy theft. I mean, even something as basic as the criminal code, even we can actually have them being prosecuted. I think it's about the enforcement. I think it's about time maybe DISCO start to enforce. I know they're doing their best, but I feel that more needs to be done, and then we also need some training. Let our judges also understand what the power sector is like, what the and what energy theft really entails, so that we can actually have more cooperation and more understanding from them. And I know Lagos State has actually also set up a special court for this purpose. So all of these avenues, I think the DISCO should actually try and tap into all of this. And then regarding the second suggestion or recommendation from the DISCO, or should I say request, which is about the regulator coming up with some form of framework to compel customers to pay. Well, I know that consuming and not making payment for what you consumed is more or less like a civil action. You know, you have a right to actually recover your debt. And I know there's this small claims court already in Lagos. I mean, I don't know how it is in Jos and in other places, but I want to believe that you can actually utilize this. And of course, as DISCOs, you have a right to deny power or to actually cut supply in the event that the customer does not actually make the relevant. But yes, we also expect the regulators to see how they can actually support the DISCOs in this regard. So all in all, I think it was a wonderful session. We want to thank the panelists. Thank you once again. Thank you, the attendees. We actually appreciate you. And I would like to hand over here to the organizers of the Power Dialogue. Owosa, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Kofo. Apologies, I'm having a bit of a network issue, so my camera can be on, but what an exciting session. Thank you to all the panelists and the fantastic questions from the audience. I'll just probably like to round this off by, we look forward to what the electricity sector has in plans for 2021. Maybe some housekeeping as well. If you're yet to subscribe to the Nigerian Electricity Hub, please do on our Facebook pages or nigerianelectricityhub.com. Also, this is the last Power Dialogue of the year, so we'd just like to wish our audience and everyone else as part of the Nigerian electricity sector an amazing holiday and all the best as we look forward to 2021. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.